Ah, Konosuba, my most beloved of Isekai. Funny, chill, good animation, some heartfelt moments here and there, a great main character, just an all-around great time to both watch and read. I think many of you understand what I mean because, and I'm going to hazard a guess here, if you clicked on this video, you are probably already in too deep like me and also love Konosuba. In a sea of Isekai, it's just so unique. Yeah, the world isn't anything new, and it isn't like the lore is that crazy, but the character writing, animation, comedy, it's all there. So much so that, at least in the land of comedy Isekai anime, I don't really think that there's anything that can top it. Well, unless we're talking about absolute peak Isekai. Welcome one, welcome all to my personal favorite comedy Isekai of all time. Move over, Konosuba. It's time to get indoctrinated into a cult that's named Kaminaki. Kaminaki, or by its full name, Kamikatsu, working for God in a godless world, is obviously an Isekai set in your initially standard fantasy Isekai setting. Your on first glance bog standard Isekai protagonist lookalike, Yukito, suddenly wakes up in another world of kings, queens, castles, and all that good stuff. Just your regular run-of-the-mill start. Well, except for a few things in particular. First, you'll notice in the first 5 seconds that Yukito doesn't exactly arrive at Isekai Landia willingly. No, instead this kid is reborn due to his death. I know, really breaking new ground here. Or, more accurately, his sacrifice. A cult sacrifice. His dad sacrificed him for his cult. Now, first off, you've probably already thought that, huh? That's kind of a strange way to start an Isekai, but don't worry, it gets stranger. I won't say exactly how this happens to try to minimize spoilers, although this does all happen in the first episode, but Yukito, via a series of unfortunate events, happens to have the deity of his dad's cult, the cult that sacrificed him, mind you, Mitama, joining his retinue. Several hijinks and boring plot points later, and you get to the main meat and potatoes of the show. This is a cult anime. More followers means Mitama is stronger, which means she can do more crazy stuff, such as, say, bringing modern machinery into this fantasy world. You might notice the obvious sarcasm when I say fantasy, which I, of course, won't go into the reason why. All I can say is you gotta watch it to get what I'm talking about. Now then, now that you all know the general gist of what's going on, I can now hit you all with a truly hot take. This show is kinda, maybe, sorta, a little bit funny. Yeah! When I say that this series goes off the walls, it does. I think what makes Kaminaki so funny, at least to me, is that you have that useless goddess or useless main character-esque dynamic in Konosuba, even though Cosimo is far from useless, but you get my gist. Except with a cult layer of paint. There's this whole aura of comedic menace that hangs over the air of the anime's entire runtime, as well as in the manga. And for one simple reason, Yukito has to be one of, if not the best comedy isekai protagonist I've seen in a minute. Homie did not want to be sacrificed. Hell, he barely even believes in Mitama, even though she's literally right there. But man, oh man, is he good at his job! This dude was born to be an absolute scumbag, proficient in all those wonderful methods cults use to amass followers and resources. Does he lie? Yup. Provide miracles? Yup. Overwork his staff and believers? Yup. Is charismatic? Yup. Is funny as hell? Yup. The dude just has that squirrely raccoon charisma in a way that is very similar to Cosimo, except, you know, he's kind of a cult leader. It's pretty strange if you think about it. Both Cosimo and Yukito have to tag along with their goddesses, except Yukito's isn't useless, which somehow results in him being that much more deranged. Like, I know this is gonna sound like blasphemy in the Isekai fandom, but I kinda like Yukito more than Cosimo if I'm going to be perfectly honest. Does he have Cosimo's depth? No. Does he have this insane amount of available content? No. But man, at least for me, Yukito's comedy just hits. I really like this subgenre of scumbag main characters like Yukito, Cosimo, and Gintoki. These not anti-heroes, but just scumbag protagonists who resort to doing good with various hijinks. Now, obviously, neither Cosimo nor Yukito even lick Gintoki's boot heels, but Yukito does at least reach as far as the man's ankle with some of these scenes and camera angles. And, of course, it wouldn't be a good scumbag Isekai-esque anime without the lemmings. I mean slaves. I mean cult members. Every one of them, while no doubt absolutely trope-filled, have their own share of hilarious hijinks and gags. Roy, in particular, while being absolute trash, I find has some of the funniest scenes. It's really crazy in my opinion how Kaminaki, even by anime standards, really seems to be pushing the envelope when it comes to the sus stuff. Like, some of these jokes are a stone's throw away from Ishisoku reviewers, but it works because the show is just that absurd. On the god side of things, Mitama is just one of the funniest little gremlins I've seen in a minute. She's seriously Aqua tier at all the crazy shit she gets up to, including resource generation, recuperating after a hard day's work, dealing out some incredible slapstick humor, fighting other gods, fighting other cults, just everything that you want a cult's legendary Pokemon-esque mascot to do. Unsurprisingly, it is Mitama's and Yukito's relationship that makes up the backbone of the show. These two are hilarious when they're on screen. I mean, just look at this. Absolutely peak comedy. Their relationship is one that we've seen a few times in the medium, with the obvious comparison being again Konosuba with Aqua and Cosimo, but also with Alice and Roku in Combatants Will Be Dispatched, Overly Cautious Hero, as well as a few manhwas like Prince of Corruption. The trope is, well, a trope for a reason, but, I mean, not to be crass, but it isn't like we're looking to reinvent the wheel here. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that Yukito and Mitama's relationship, while not entirely unique, is still a welcome one that really elevates the enjoyment factor of this series to the next level, at least for me. That said, I should go ahead and get the elephant out of the room here. Why does this manga and anime have such a low rating considering how much I gassed it up? Like, even for Isekai Slop, anything below a 6.8 is considered very bad. So what gives? Is it the fan service? Nah, let's be real here. If you're the sort of person digging through the garbage like I am, you're already all but jaded at this point, so that's not it. Is it the animation? Again, I already covered that the bad animation is actually a plus. Nah, it's just because that first episode and first chapter are, well, not that great. Again, I'm not going to spoil, but just trust me on this, that first episode is rough. You can really tell that the author just wanted to get the plot going and had to set up the world, which resulted in a very blink and you'll miss it paced first episode. But the rest of the series is leagues above it, and makes use of the fast pacings much better, as it uses it to its advantage for the comedy, as opposed to the first episode, which is much more serious due to Mitama playing a relatively minor role in that episode. So, yeah, don't drop the series or think I'm crazy because the first episode sucks. You've been warned. On top of all that, Kaminaki really carries this feeling. Note that it's present in the manga too, but especially in the anime, that not many low-budget modern series have. Namely, it seems like the people who made the anime had fun making it. I mentioned this in my last video on 7th Prince, but this trait, while admittedly quite vague and subjective, I think is extremely important for a comedy anime to truly land. And for Kaminaki it does in spades. Yes, the animation isn't good in the traditional sense, but it's incredible in the shitpost sense. You cannot tell me that this scene, paired with this so obviously awful CGI, was not done on purpose. It's just dumb fun. It's stupid, full of fan service, full of crude jokes, full of low-effort animation, full of low-hanging fruit content, and yet, somehow, it just works. It pains me that there's a very good chance that this series is never going to get another season because it's just that good, much less an official English translation of the manga. And with that, we now arrive at the part of the video I was dreading to talk about, the specifics. Like, yeah, I could go into the crazier details of the plot, how they're similar to Konosuba, and how the comedy just lands, but those are all things that you should experience yourself by watching the show. I don't want to spoil it. And to be honest, even though that all sounds good, that doesn't explain why I necessarily think that this series is better than several more popular members of its ilk. I think the way I can describe it is that it just flows well. It's trash, yes, predictable trash too, but it's just so pure in what it does. It's kinda like High School DxD in that respect. It's sus, knows what it is, isn't ashamed to show it, and is happy to make you laugh your lungs out with all that black humor it can manage. Now, this is minor spoilers for later in the manga, but trust me, when the Cult Wars get started, it honestly becomes sort of a bastardized version of screwed up Pokemon mixed with video games. You just want to see what poor sap Yukito and Ko are gonna sucker into joining the cult next, and that sort of collectathon mentality, on top of your regular isekai slopness, gives Kaminaki a unique mouthfeel. It's a bad series, sure, but man, can a bad series be good if you get what I'm saying. Plus, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but the story isn't actually completely drop-dead awful. Like, obviously it isn't, because otherwise I wouldn't be recommending it, but usually a good comedy like this can have a subpar plot like with, say, Campfire Cooking in Another World, an incredible show with great characters and comedy, but with a relatively middling plot, at least by the first season's standards. I still need to watch season 2. But Kaminaki doesn't really have that problem. Like, I'm kind of beating a dead horse here, but man, a cult anime? Really? Like, if you know anything about Asian cults, you know that they take that shit seriously. So I'm honestly surprised that we got something like this to begin with. But it works off the taboos' topic so well that even if you don't appreciate the hook or like the whole idea of a cult leader anime, it just sucks you in. I think the best example of this is with how the world is set up. By the way, note the major spoiler alert. Skip forward 30 seconds if you don't want to be spoiled. Like the fact that this series pulls a switcheroo on you and reveals that it isn't actually an isekai, but a time travel story. Or how the plot seemingly regresses with the whole Cult Wars angle, only showing up after the Archons, the leading antagonist group, shows up. It's just such a weird show for an isekai, which makes it all the more fun. The crappy animation, the stupid as hell humor, the almost Gintama-esque dry humor, it's all there. Is it the most original anime on the planet? Well, usually I'd say something cliche like, no, but with here, honestly, kinda yeah. At least as far as the anime is concerned, the way it doesn't take itself seriously reminds me of Gintama, and the simple idea of a cult-based isekai is also a welcomed breath of fresh air from the deluge of other slop that I'm finding down here in the dumpster. Like, don't get me wrong, this show is slop, but this slop has pineapple on it. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that if you are a fellow slop enjoyer and want to give yourself a chuckle alongside a fairly competent story with fun characters and comedy, go ahead and give this a watch, or read it. And then come back here and let me know what you think. As you can probably imagine, the fan base of this show is basically non-existent. So I'd love to hear y'all's opinions. And with that, thanks for watching.